The massive space station floated in the darkness between stars. Crossroads Prime was bigger than most cities on Earth. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its outer rings. Inside, aliens of every shape and size walked through the bright corridors. Some had 4 arms. Others had scales or fur or skin that glowed in the dark. This was where the galaxy came together to do business, make deals, and settle arguments. Today was special. The Galactic Combat Tournament was about to begin. Tai Yang walked through the crowded halls with his small team. He was tall for a human with dark hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Behind him came 3 others. Bora was short and clever, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Dr. Hyun was older, with gray in his hair and a datapad always in his hands. Jin Woo was the youngest, barely 22, with the eager energy of someone who wanted to prove himself. They were the only humans on the entire station. "Stay close," Tae-yang said quietly. "And remember, we're here to watch and learn. Nothing more." Jin Woo frowned but said nothing. The young soldier's hands kept clenching into fists. Tae-yang understood. It was hard being surrounded by aliens who looked at humans like they were insects. The group entered the main arena. It was enormous. Thousands of seats rose up in circles around a flat fighting floor. The floor was made of some kind of dark metal that could repair itself if it got damaged. Energy barriers hummed softly, ready to protect the crowd from whatever violence happened below. The seats were filling up fast. Tae-yang saw creatures he recognized and many he didn't. There were the Quellan, who looked like walking trees, the Drath covered in blue fur with 6 eyes, the Margesh who floated instead of walked. And there in the section of honor sat the Kresh. The Kresh were predators. Anyone could see that. They stood 8 feet tall on powerful legs. Their bodies were covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. Sharp claws tipped their fingers. Their faces were long with rows of teeth meant for tearing meat. They were the warriors of the galaxy. They were the fighters everyone feared. And their champion had never lost. The ceremony began with speeches from important aliens that Tae-yang barely listened to. He was watching the Kresh section. He was watching her. War Chief Velra sat on a throne-like chair in the center of her people. She was bigger than the other Kresh. Her scales were darker, almost black in some places. Scars crossed her arms and shoulders like badges of honor. When she moved, muscles rippled under her armored skin. She radiated power and confidence. Then came the moment Tae-yang had been expecting. Velra stood and walked to the edge of her platform. The entire arena fell silent. Her voice boomed out, amplified by technology built into the station. "Another cycle. Another tournament. And again I see the weak pretending to be strong." She turned slowly, her yellow eyes sweeping across the arena. "I see species who talk of honor but run from real battle. I see creatures who hide behind technology because their bodies are soft." Her gaze stopped on the human section. "And I see the newest weaklings of all. The humans!" Tae-yang kept his face blank. Beside him, Jin Woo tensed. "Look at them," Velra continued, and now she was pointing directly at Tae-yang. "Tiny, fragile, no claws, no scales, no natural weapons at all. They come from a soft world where they are the apex predators." She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed. "But out here in the real galaxy, they are nothing. Prey pretending to be hunters." Some aliens in the crowd laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. A few species that were friendly to Earth remained silent, but they didn't defend humanity either. "I challenge any male of their species to face me," Velra announced. "Let's see if these softskins can do more than talk. Let's see if they break as easily as they look." The arena erupted in noise. Cheers from the Kresh section. Nervous chatter from everyone else. The human section was completely quiet. Tae-yang stood up slowly. Every eye turned to him. He didn't raise his voice, but somehow everyone heard him clearly. "We accept your challenge." Velra's eyes widened slightly, then she grinned, showing all her teeth. "Good. Finally some entertainment. Try not to die too quickly, little human. I want the galaxy to see what happens when weakness faces true strength." She turned and walked away, her people cheering. The ceremony continued, but Tae-yang wasn't paying attention anymore. He was thinking, planning. As soon as they could leave, the human team hurried back to their quarters. It was a small room with basic furniture. As soon as the door closed, Jin Woo exploded. "Commander, let me fight her. I've trained my whole life. I'm ready." "No," Tae-yang said simply. "But sir, Jin Woo." Tae-yang's voice was gentle but firm. "You're a good soldier, but you're not ready for this. None of our soldiers are. Not yet. Then who? Bora asked. She had her tablet out, already pulling up data. We can't back down now. If we withdraw, Earth will lose what little respect we have. Dr. Hyun was nodding. She's right. The trade negotiations are already fragile. 3 different species are looking for reasons to classify us as a minor civilization. If we show weakness now, we'll lose economic rights, travel privileges, maybe even our seat at the council. Taiyang sat down heavily. He had known this was coming. Velra had been making comments about humans for months. This public challenge was inevitable. I'll fight her, he said quietly. Everyone stared at him. Commander, you're a diplomat, Bora said carefully. Not a tournament fighter. I was other things before I was a diplomat. That was true. Before Earth made first contact with aliens, Taiyang had been in special forces. He had fought in 3 different wars. He had trained in combat styles most people had never heard of. But that was years ago, and Velra was something else entirely. It's suicide, Jinwoo whispered. Maybe, Taiyang admitted. But we need to make a statement. We need to show that humans won't be bullied. And if I'm going to die, at least it will mean something. Dr. Hyun cleared his throat. Before you commit to martyrdom, let me show you something. He pulled up footage on the main screen. It showed Velra's previous fights. I've been studying Kresh physiology since we arrived. They're incredibly strong. Their reflexes are good, but they have weaknesses. Or like what? Taeyang leaned forward. They rely entirely on overwhelming force. Look. Dr. Hyun played a fight in slow motion. Every opponent tries to match her strength. They all fail. But notice how she never really defends. She doesn't need to. She's always been stronger and tougher than everyone she fights. Bora was nodding. She's never learned to fight someone who uses different tactics. Exactly, Dr. Hyun said. Kresh evolved as apex predators. They never needed sophisticated fighting techniques. They just needed to be bigger and meaner than everything else. But humans, he smiled slightly. We evolved as persistence hunters. We learned to kill things bigger and stronger than us. We had to. We had no choice. Taeyang studied the footage. He watched Velra move, fast, powerful, confident. But Dr. Hyun was right. There was a pattern. She had habits, small openings. How much time do I have? 3 days, Bora said. The match is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. But we can delay 1 day if we claim you need time to prepare. 3 days to figure out how to beat something that should kill me in seconds. Taeyang smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, I've faced worse odds. That was a lie, but his team didn't need to know that. Outside their quarters, news of the challenge was already spreading through the galaxy. Billions of beings watched the announcement. The betting began immediately. The odds were 1,000 to 1 against the human. On Earth, people watched in fear and hope. Their representative was going to fight an alien champion. He was probably going to die, but at least he was going to fight. In the Kresh section of the station, Velra celebrated with her warriors. She drank fermented blood wine and laughed about how quickly she would crush the human. She had fought 63 opponents. She had never lost. She had never even been injured. A tiny human diplomat would be easy, the easiest fight of her life. Taeyang barely slept that first night. He spent hours in the small training room attached to their quarters. It wasn't much, just padded floors and some basic equipment, but it was enough. He practiced movements he hadn't used in years. Old techniques from old wars. His body remembered even if his mind sometimes hesitated. By morning, every muscle ached. He didn't care. The team gathered for breakfast in their shared space. The food was bland, processed nutrition that all species could eat safely. Taeyang forced himself to eat anyway. He would need energy. I've been going through the data all night, Dr. Hyun said, his eyes red from lack of sleep. The Kresh have a nerve cluster here. He pointed to a spot on a holographic model of Velra's body right under the jaw. It's protected by scales, but the scales there are thinner. If you could strike it with enough force and precision, she'd go down, Bora finished. She had been watching fight footage. But getting there is the problem. She's fast, and her reach is almost double yours. Jinwoo brought up a new angle. What about armor, weapons? What are the rules? No weapons in the first rounds, Taeyang said. And armor has to be approved. Anything that enhances strength is banned. The tournament is supposed to test natural ability. Natural ability, Jinwoo muttered. How is it fair when she's twice your size? It's not, Tae-yang said simply. It's not supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be honest. This is what we are. A small species in a galaxy full of bigger ones. We either learn to survive anyway or we don't survive at all. The young soldier looked down at his hands. I hate feeling weak. Then use it, Tae-yang said. Weakness can be a weapon too. It makes people underestimate you. Bora pulled up news feeds from across the galaxy. It's everywhere. Every major network is covering this. Some are calling it entertainment. Others are calling it a tragedy waiting to happen. She paused. Earth's government sent a message. They said you don't have to do this. They'll find another way. There is no other way, Tae-yang said. Not anymore. Velra made this public. If I back down, humanity backs down. We can't afford that. Dr. Hyun nodded slowly. The Margish Trade Coalition is watching this closely. If we show strength, they'll approve our mining rights in the outer sectors. If we don't, he didn't need to finish. The next 2 days blurred together. Tae-yang trained constantly. He studied every second of footage they had on Velra. He watched how she moved, how she attacked, how she celebrated. He looked for patterns, habits, anything he could use. Bora ran simulations on her computer. She calculated angles and timing. The window would be tiny, less than a second. If Tae-yang was even slightly off, Velra would hit him, and one hit from her would probably kill him. Your best chance is in the opening seconds, Bora explained, showing him the numbers. She charges. She always charges. It's how she establishes dominance. If you can use that momentum against her, big if, Jinwoo said quietly. Everything about this is a big if, Tae-yang replied, but we work with what we have. On the second day, an unexpected visitor came to their quarters. The door chimed. When Bora checked the camera, she gasped. It's Ambassador Krell. Krell was a Drath, one of the blue-furred species. He was old and respected, one of the few aliens who had been friendly to humans from the beginning. Tae-yang opened the door. Ambassador, this is an honor. Krell's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. It was how his people showed concern. I came to tell you that you don't have to do this. I have spoken with the council. We can declare Velra's challenge inappropriate. She violated protocols by making it so public and personal. And humanity would still look weak, Tae-yang said. But thank you for trying. Krell's fur rippled, a Drath sigh. You humans are stubborn. Like Terran mules, I believe the expression is. Despite everything, Tae-yang smiled. You've been studying our culture. Someone should. Krell stepped inside. May I speak plainly? Please. The galaxy sees humans as prey. This is not entirely unfair. You are small, physically limited, and you come from a world with relatively few natural predators. You did not evolve like the Kresh or the Drath or even the Margesh, but Krell's eyes focused intently on Tae-yang. I have read your history. Your species fought each other for thousands of years. You developed weapons, tactics, strategies. You learned to kill things much stronger than yourselves. This is not the weakness the galaxy thinks it is. Then why does everyone think we're weak? Jinwoo asked. Because you haven't shown them otherwise, Krell said simply. In the 15 years since first contact, humanity has been cautious. Diplomatic, you've avoided conflicts. This is wise, but it has created a perception. Velra's challenge is actually an opportunity. A dangerous one, but an opportunity nonetheless. To prove we're not prey, Tae-yang said. Exactly. Krell moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. I fought in my youth. I was never champion, but I was good. And I learned that the strongest warrior isn't always the one who wins. Sometimes it's the smartest, or the fastest, or the one who wants it most. His eyes locked onto Tae-yang. Good luck, Commander. The Drath people are betting on you. After he left, the room was quiet. The Drath are betting on us, Jinwoo said, amazed. Bora checked her tablet. He's right. The Drath betting houses are putting money on Tae-yang, so are a few others. The odds are still terrible, but some people believe, Dr. Hyun finished. That night, Tae-yang couldn't train anymore. His body needed rest. Instead, he sat alone in the dark of his small room. He thought about Earth, about his family. His sister had sent a message earlier, telling him she was proud. His nephew had drawn a picture of Tae-yang fighting a dragon. Children always made things simpler than they were. He thought about the human race. Barely a century ago, they didn't even know aliens existed. Now they were scattered across dozens of worlds, trying to find their place in a galaxy that didn't want them. They were building, learning, growing. But it was hard. Every day was a struggle to be taken seriously. Maybe this fight would help. Or maybe he would die and it would make things worse. There was no way to know. All he could do was try. The morning of the fight arrived. Taeyang woke early and went through his stretching routine. His body felt ready. His mind was calm. He had done everything he could to prepare. Now it was just a matter of execution. The team helped him get ready. The tournament allowed simple clothing. Taeyang chose flexible pants and a fitted shirt. Nothing that would restrict movement, no shoes. He wanted to feel the ground beneath him. Remember, Dr. Hyun said one last time, the nerve cluster is under the jaw. Strike up and forward. You need force, but more importantly, you need precision. I remember Bora showed him the updated odds. You're down to 800 to 1 now. Some big money came in overnight supporting you. We don't know who. Doesn't matter, Taeyang said. He was centering himself, going to the calm place inside where fear couldn't reach. It was something he'd learned years ago. In a different war on a different world. What matters is the fight. Jinwoo couldn't stay quiet anymore. Sir, I just want to say, whatever happens, you've already made us proud. You didn't have to do this, but you are. That takes courage. Taeyang put a hand on the young soldier's shoulder. We all do what we must. You'll understand that better as you get older. The walk to the arena felt both too long and too short. Corridors passed. Aliens stopped to stare. Some whispered. Others took pictures. A few made gestures that were clearly mocking. Taeyang ignored them all. The arena was already full. 20,000 beings packed the seats. The noise was deafening. Taeyang stepped into the human preparation chamber. It was a small room with a single door leading to the fighting floor. He could hear the crowd through the walls. A screen showed the arena. Velra was already there, warming up. She was doing claw strikes, her movements powerful and fast. Each strike cut through the air with a whistle. She looked unstoppable. The referee's voice came through speakers. Fighters prepare. Match begins in 5 minutes. Taeyang closed his eyes. He breathed slowly. In and out. He visualized the fight. Velra charging, him moving, the strike. He ran it through his mind 100 times in those 5 minutes. Fighters enter the arena. The door opened. Light and sound crashed over him like a wave. Taeyang walked onto the fighting floor. The metal was cool under his bare feet. He walked to his starting position. Across the arena, Velra entered. The crowd roared. She raised her arms, showing off her claws. She beat her chest. She roared back at the crowd, and it sounded like thunder. Then she looked at Taeyang, and she smiled. It was going to be a long fight, or a very, very short one. The arena was exactly 50 meters across. The floor was dark metal that gleamed under the bright lights. Around them, the energy barriers hummed, ready to contain the violence. Above, cameras floated on silent drones, broadcasting every angle to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Taeyang stood in his designated circle. He could feel his heart beating steady and strong. Not fast, not slow, just ready. His breathing was controlled. His mind was clear. This was the state he needed. The state where instinct and training became one. Velra paced on her side like a caged predator. She was massive up close. 8 feet of muscle and scale and raw power. Her claws clicked against the metal floor. Her yellow eyes never left Taeyang. She was sizing him up, looking for fear, for weakness. She wouldn't find it, not because Taeyang wasn't afraid. He was, but fear was just information. It told him this was dangerous. It sharpened his focus. It reminded him that mistakes would be fatal. That was useful. The referee entered the arena. It was a being made of living crystal, Ambassador Glosa. Its voice echoed strangely, as if coming from everywhere at once. This match is sanctioned under tournament law. Victory conditions are submission, unconsciousness, or death. Fighters may not exit the arena during combat. Lethal force is permitted. Medical teams are standing by. Do both fighters understand these terms? Yes, Taeyang said quietly. Velra's response was a roar that made the crowd cheer even louder. Then take your positions. They were already in position. Taeyang stood relaxed, arms at his sides. He looked small and vulnerable. That was fine. Let her think he was easy prey. Velra dropped into a battle stance. Her body lowered. Her claws extended fully. Every muscle tensed like a coiled spring. She looked ready to explode forward. The crowd's noise rose to a peak, then suddenly fell. The silence was absolute. 20,000 beings held their breath. Across the galaxy, billions watched and waited. Ambassador Glossa raised one crystalline arm. "Fighters, begin!" Velra moved instantly. She launched herself forward with terrifying speed. Her feet hit the metal floor in great pounding steps that echoed through the arena. She covered 10 meters in just over a second. Her right arm was already pulling back, claws ready to strike. She was fast, faster than Tae-Yang had expected. The footage hadn't captured just how explosive her first move was. For a split second, doubt flickered through his mind. This was really happening. This 8-foot monster was charging him with the clear intent to tear him apart. Then training took over. Thought disappeared. Only action remained. Tae-Yang didn't retreat. He didn't try to dodge sideways. Both of those responses would give Velra time to adjust, to follow up. Instead, he did the one thing she wouldn't expect. He moved forward, toward her. Velra's eyes widened. No one had ever charged toward her before. Opponents always tried to back away, to create distance. This was wrong. This was breaking the pattern, but she was already committed to her attack. Her clawed hand descended in a massive arc, aimed at where Tae-Yang's head should be. The force behind that strike could shatter concrete. If it connected with a human skull, there wouldn't be enough left to identify. Tae-Yang was already inside her reach. His timing was perfect, measured in fractions of seconds. He had studied her attack pattern for hours. He knew exactly when she would commit, when she would be unable to change direction. He flowed past her striking arm like water around a stone. His body was low, compact, moving with a grace that looked effortless but represented thousands of hours of training. Ancient human martial arts, techniques refined over centuries of war, when humans had nothing but their own bodies to fight with. For one frozen moment, Tae-Yang was directly in front of Velra, too close for her to hit with her claws, too close for her to react. Her momentum was still carrying her forward. Her strike was passing overhead. She was completely open. He could see the nerve cluster, right where Dr. Hyun had shown him. Under her jaw, where the scales were thinner, a small target on a massive opponent. Tae-Yang's entire body moved as one unit. His legs drove upward. His hips rotated. His core twisted. His shoulder extended. Every piece of kinetic energy flowed through his arm and into his hand. The palm heel strike was one of humanity's oldest techniques. Not a punch with the fist. The fist had too many small bones that could break. Instead, the strike used the heel of the palm, backed by the entire skeleton structure of the arm. It was designed to transfer maximum force through a small point of impact. Ancient warriors had used this technique to kill armored opponents, to break through protection, to find weak points. Tae-Yang's strike was perfect. His palm connected with the nerve cluster beneath Velra's jaw. The impact was sharp and focused. It wasn't about power. It was about precision, about hitting exactly the right spot in exactly the right way. The nerve cluster lit up like fire. Velra's entire nervous system overloaded. Her brain received a massive shock of confused signals all at once. Pain, disruption, system failure. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Her body went rigid. The roar that had been building in her throat died into a strangled gasp. Her legs stopped working. Her balance vanished. But her momentum was still there. She took 2 more stumbling steps forward. Her massive body moving on autopilot even though her consciousness was already gone. Then she fell. 8 feet of muscle and scale and supposedly unstoppable warrior crashed face first onto the metal floor. The impact echoed through the arena like a thunderclap. Her body bounced slightly, then lay completely still. Tae-Yang stood over her, his hand still raised from the strike. His breathing was elevated but controlled. His stance was balanced and ready. If she got up, he would be prepared. But he didn't think she would get up. The arena was silent, completely, absolutely silent. 20,000 beings stared in shock. Their minds couldn't process what they had just seen. The undefeated champion, the warrior who had crushed 63 opponents, was lying unconscious on the floor. The fight had lasted less than 3 seconds and the human was still standing. Ambassador Glossa stood frozen, its crystalline body flickering with confusion. This had never happened before. In 7 tournaments, Velra had never even been knocked down. The medical team rushed onto the floor. They were a mixed species group trained in emergency alien physiology. They had scanners out instantly, checking Velra's vital signs. One of them, a small 6-limbed creature, looked up at the referee. "She's unconscious but stable." Neural overload. She'll recover, but she's out. Taeyang finally lowered his hand. He stepped back, giving the medics room to work. He looked up at the referee. I believe that qualifies as a knockout. Victory. His voice was calm. Matter of fact, as if he had just won a practice match instead of defeating the most feared warrior in the galaxy, Ambassador. Glossa's crystalline form pulsed with light. Its voice, when it came, sounded uncertain. Yes, the match is concluded. Victory to Commander Taeyang of Earth. For another heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the arena exploded. The human section erupted in screaming celebration. Bora was jumping up and down. Dr. Hyun had tears in his eyes. Jin Woo was shouting so loud his voice broke. Around them, other species sat in stunned silence or broke into confused chatter. On Earth, entire cities went insane. Billions of humans who had been watching in fear and dread suddenly found themselves celebrating. Their representative had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that should have killed him in seconds, he had won, and he had done it in one strike. In the creche section, there was only shocked silence. Velra's warriors stared at their fallen champion. Some looked angry. Others looked afraid. Their world had just been turned upside down. The thing they had believed was impossible had just happened. Taeyang walked calmly toward the exit gate. Medical personnel approached him asking if he was injured. He waved them off. He hadn't been touched. Velra had never landed a single hit. As he left the arena floor, he looked back once. The medical team was loading Velra onto a stretcher. She was still unconscious. He felt a strange mixture of respect and pity. She was a great warrior, but she had never learned to fight someone who didn't play by her rules. The human preparation chamber was chaos when he entered. His team mobbed him. Even Dr. Hyun, who was usually so controlled, grabbed him in a hug. You did it, Bora kept saying. You actually did it. We did it, Taeyang corrected. The research, the planning. I just executed. Just executed, Jinwoo laughed wildly. Just executed. Sir, you beat the unbeatable champion in 3 seconds. 3.2 seconds, Bora said, checking her tablet. The drones have exact timing. From the start, signal to her hitting the ground. 3.2 seconds. Taeyang sat down heavily. Now that it was over, the adrenaline was fading. His hand hurt where he'd struck her. Tomorrow he would be sore. But he had won. Somehow, impossibly, he had won. Outside the chamber, he could hear the arena descending into pandemonium. Species were arguing. Some were demanding replays. Others were trying to leave. The tournament officials were trying to restore order. A message came through on the chamber's communication system. It was Ambassador Mi-sun, Earth's head diplomat. Her face appeared on the screen and she was crying. Taeyang, the entire world is watching. You've done something incredible. You've changed everything. I just want to fight, he said quietly. No, Mi-sun said firmly. You proved that humanity belongs here. You showed the galaxy that we're not we. The medical bay on Crossroads Prime was built to handle almost any injury from any species. The walls were clean white. Machines hummed softly, monitoring dozens of patients. Doctors and nurses of various species moved between beds, checking readouts and adjusting treatments. In a private room at the back, Velra was starting to wake up. Her eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above her was white and too bright. Her head felt like it was filled with static. Her body wouldn't respond properly when she tried to move. For a confused moment, she couldn't remember where she was or what had happened. Then memory crashed back. The arena. The human. The charge. And then, nothing. She tried to sit up and couldn't. Straps held her down. Safety restraints, she realized dimly. They weren't there to imprison her. They were there to keep her from hurting herself while her nervous system recovered. A doctor entered. It was a Quellan, one of the tree-like species. Its branches rustled as it moved. You're awake. Good. How are you feeling? What happened? Velra's voice came out rough and weak. She hated how it sounded. Neural shock, the doctor explained, checking a display. Your nerve cluster beneath your jaw was struck with extreme precision. The impact overloaded your system. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. 6 hours. The fight had felt like it lasted seconds. Had it lasted seconds? She couldn't remember clearly. Just the human moving and then darkness. Did I win? But even as she asked, she knew the answer. She could see it in the doctor's awkward silence. No, you were knocked unconscious. The human was declared the winner. Velra closed her eyes. the undefeated champion. 7 tournaments, 63 victories all gone, ended by a creature half her size who had beaten her so quickly she hadn't even seen it coming. The shame was crushing. Worse than the physical pain. Worse than the lingering confusion in her head. She had lost. And not just lost, she had been humiliated. Destroyed. Made to look weak in front of the entire galaxy. "I want to be alone," she said quietly. The doctor hesitated. "I should keep monitoring, alone." The word came out as a roar. The doctor left quickly. Velra lay in the darkness of her thoughts. How? How had the human done it? He was so small, so fragile. He had no natural weapons, no armor, nothing that should have let him win, but he had won anyway. Meanwhile, in the human quarters, chaos of a different kind was unfolding. The communication systems were overloaded with messages from Earth. Governments wanted to speak with Tai Yang. News organizations wanted interviews. Scientists wanted to study his technique. Everyone wanted something. Tai Yang had escaped to the small training room. He needed quiet. His hand was bandaged now. Dr. Hyun had checked it carefully. Nothing broken, just bruised. It would heal. Bo-Ra found him there, sitting in the dark. "You can't hide forever. The galaxy wants answers." "I don't have answers," Tai Yang said. "I just did what needed to be done." "Well, you've become a symbol whether you want to be or not." She sat down next to him. 3 different species have requested formal meetings with the Earth delegation. The Drath want to establish a military training exchange. The Margesh are offering technology transfers. Even some Kresh have reached out. Kresh? Younger ones. Warriors who saw the fight and realized their training might be incomplete. Bo-Ra smiled slightly. "You've started something. The galaxy is reevaluating everything they thought they knew about humans." "That was the goal," Tai Yang admitted. "But now I'm wondering if we've opened a door we can't close." "Too late for that," Bo-Ra said. "The footage is everywhere. Every network in the galaxy has shown your fight. Some have shown it hundreds of times, analyzing every movement. You're famous, Commander. Possibly the most famous human alive." Tai Yang groaned and put his head in his hands. "I just wanted to prove we weren't weak. You did that and more. You proved we're dangerous." Over the next several hours, the station slowly returned to something like normalcy. The tournament was postponed while officials decided what to do. Many fighters were reconsidering their participation. If a human could defeat Velra that easily, what did that say about the tournament's legitimacy? Ambassador Misun called an emergency meeting with the human team. Her holographic image appeared in their common room, looking tired but excited. "The situation is evolving rapidly," she explained. "Earth's position in the galactic community has completely shifted. Species that ignored us are now approaching with respect, some with fear. Trade negotiations that were stalled are suddenly moving forward. It's unprecedented. What about the Kresh?" Jinwoo asked. "Complex," Misun admitted. "Their government has filed a formal protest, claiming the fight was unfair. They're demanding an investigation into whether Tai Yang used illegal enhancements or techniques." "That's ridiculous," Dr. Hyun said. "Everything was legal. We followed every rule." "Of course it was legal," Misun agreed. "But they need to save face. Their champion lost. Their entire warrior culture is built on physical dominance. Having that challenged by a supposedly weak species is causing problems in their society." Tai Yang finally spoke up. "What do they want?" "Officially? A rematch under stricter scrutiny. Unofficially? Some of their leadership wants to learn from us. They're realizing that maybe strength isn't everything." "Will there be a rematch?" Bo-Ra asked. "Not unless Tai Yang agrees," Misun said firmly. "You've done enough. More than enough. If you want to come home, you've earned it." Everyone looked at Tai Yang. He sat quietly thinking. Part of him wanted to go home to rest, to let others deal with the political complications. But another part of him knew this wasn't over. One fight had changed perceptions, but change was fragile. It needed to be reinforced. "I'll stay," he said finally. "For now. But I'm not fighting in the tournament. That's not why I came here." "Understood," Misun said. "I'll inform the officials." After the call ended, the team sat in tired silence. The adrenaline was gone. The excitement was fading. Now came the hard part. Living with the consequences of what they had done. Jinwoo broke the silence. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When you were facing her in that moment, were you scared?" Tai Yang thought about lying. about giving some brave answer about confidence and training. But these were his people. They deserved honesty. Terrified, he admitted. Right up until I moved. Then there was no room for fear. Only action, but you looked so calm. That's the trick, Taeyang said. Fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous. The question is what you do with that information. Do you let it paralyze you? Or do you use it to sharpen your focus? Dr. Hyun nodded slowly. That's very philosophical. Not really, Taeyang said. It's just survival. Humans have been the underdogs for most of our history. We fought predators bigger and stronger than us. We survived ice ages and droughts and plagues. We learned to compensate for our weaknesses. That's what I did today. I used techniques developed by thousands of years of humans learning to punch above their weight class. Literally, Bora said, and despite everything, they all laughed. A message came through on the communication system. It was from an unexpected source. One of the Kresh warriors who had been in Velra's entourage. His name was Kral and he was requesting a private meeting with Taeyang. Could be a trap, Jinwoo said immediately. Could be, Taeyang agreed, but I don't think so. Let's see what he wants. They arranged to meet in a neutral conference room. Station security was present, but at a distance. When Kral entered, he looked uncomfortable. He was smaller than Velra, but still imposing. His scales were a lighter green, almost jade-colored. Commander Taeyang, he said formally. His universal translator rendered his growling speech into smooth English. I come seeking knowledge, not conflict. I'm listening, Taeyang said. Kral sat down heavily. The chair groaned under his weight. I watched your fight. Many times. I still don't understand how you won. You shouldn't have won. By every measure we know, Velra is superior. Stronger, faster, tougher, yet you defeated her in seconds. I used techniques she wasn't familiar with. But how? Kral's frustration was obvious. We train our entire lives. We practice combat from childhood. How can your techniques be better? They're not better, Taeyang said carefully. They're different. Your people developed as apex predators. You never needed sophisticated fighting techniques because you were always the strongest thing around. Humans are different. We were prey for millions of years. We had to get creative to survive. Kral absorbed this slowly. You're saying that weakness made you stronger? I'm saying that necessity breeds innovation. When you can't win with strength, you learn to win with intelligence, with precision, with tactics your opponent doesn't expect. I want to learn this, Kral said suddenly. I want to learn how humans fight. And I'm not the only one. There are others among the Kresh who see the truth. Our way is not the only way. Maybe not even the best way. Taeyang looked at the young warrior. There was genuine humility there. Genuine curiosity. This was someone willing to admit he didn't know everything. That was rare, especially among warriors. That's not my decision alone, Taeyang said. But I can speak to my government. If Earth agrees, we could arrange cultural and training exchanges. Kral's eyes brightened. I would be honored. After Kral left Bora, the news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within a day, every inhabited system knew the story. The unbeatable Kresh champion had fallen. A human of all creatures had done the impossible. The footage played constantly on every news network, analyzed from every angle. Scientists studied the strike frame by frame. Military analysts wrote papers about the implications. Philosophers debated what it meant for galactic society, and betting houses across dozens of worlds lost enormous amounts of money paying out to the few who had bet on the human. In the human quarters, messages kept flooding in. Most were congratulatory. Some were curious. A few were hostile, from species that didn't like seeing the established order disrupted. Taeyang ignored them all. He had work to do. Ambassador Misun had arranged a series of meetings. The first was with the Margesh Trade Coalition. The Margesh were an interesting species. They floated instead of walking. Their bodies composed of what looked like liquid metal that shifted and flowed. They communicated through harmonic tones that the translators rendered into speech. 3 Margesh representatives met with Taeyang and Misun in a formal conference room. The leader, whose name translated roughly as harmonious flow, spoke first. Commander Taeyang, your victory has caused us to reassess many assumptions. We had classified humans as a minor species with limited potential. We were incorrect. Thank you, Taeyang said simply. The mining rights we previously denied are now approved. Additionally, we wish to propose a technology exchange program. We have propulsion systems that would benefit Earth. In exchange, we would like access to your combat training methods. Mi-sun carefully hid her surprise. Combat training? The Margish are not warriors. No, Harmonious Flow agreed. But we operate in dangerous sectors. Pirates and raiders are common. Our security forces rely on energy weapons and barriers. But technology can fail. Having backup methods, techniques that require no equipment, this would be valuable. It made sense. The galaxy was a dangerous place. Species that couldn't fight were often victimized. If humans could teach them to defend themselves without relying solely on technology, that was worth something. We can discuss terms, Mi-sun said professionally, but her eyes met Tae-yang's and they both knew. This was just the beginning. Earth had something valuable to offer the galaxy. Knowledge that had been dismissed as primitive was suddenly in demand. The next meeting was with the Drath. Ambassador Krell came himself, along with 2 military advisors. The Drath had evolved as pack hunters on a harsh ice world. They understood cooperation and strategy. They had always been friendly to humans, but now that friendship was deepening into something more. We want a formal alliance, Krell said bluntly. Military and economic. The Drath Collective and the Human Federation working together. That's a significant step, Mi-sun said carefully. It is, Krell agreed, but we see the galaxy changing. For too long, the Kresh and species like them have dominated through strength. They've set the standards. They've made the rules. Your victory shows that there are other paths to power. We want to explore those paths together. Tae-yang spoke up. You want to learn our fighting techniques? Yes, but more than that. We want to learn how humans think about conflict, how you approach problems you can't solve with brute force. Your species has survived for millions of years as physically weak creatures on a dangerous world. That required intelligence, creativity, adaptation. These are skills we value. The discussion continued for hours. Formal treaties would take months to negotiate, but the foundation was being laid. Earth was building real alliances, not just trade agreements. Partners who saw value in what humans could offer. But not all reactions were positive. The Kresh government had gone quiet after their initial protest. That worried Mi-sun more than anger would have. Quiet meant they were planning something. She shared her concerns with Tae-yang that evening. They're wounded, she explained. Not just Velra personally, but their entire society. The Kresh have built their civilization on the idea that strength equals worth. You've challenged that at its core. What do you think they'll do? Tae-yang asked. I don't know, but we need to be careful. Wounded predators are dangerous. 2 days after the fight, Velra finally left the medical bay. She refused escort. She walked through the station alone, her head high despite the shame burning inside her. Aliens stopped and stared. Some whispered. A few brave ones took pictures. She ignored them all and went to the Kresh section of the station. Her people had taken over an entire wing. When she entered, the celebration she'd expected wasn't there. Instead, there was uncomfortable silence. Her second-in-command, a warrior named Drak, approached carefully. War Chief, you're recovered. I'm recovered, she confirmed. Her voice sounded normal again. Strong. She hated that it had ever sounded weak. Assemble the warriors. I need to speak with them. An hour later, 30 Kresh warriors stood in their training hall. It was a large space with high ceilings. Usually it echoed with the sounds of combat practice. Now it was silent, waiting. Velra faced them. She had thought carefully about what to say. The easy path would be to make excuses, to claim the human had cheated somehow, to blame anyone but herself. But that wasn't the warrior's way. That was the coward's way. I lost, she said simply. I underestimated my opponent. I assumed that because he was small and weak-looking, he would be easy to defeat. I was wrong, and that mistake cost me everything. The warriors stood silent, absorbing this. I've been thinking about why I lost, Velra continued. The human didn't beat me with strength. He beat me with technique, with precision, with knowledge I didn't have. We Kresh train to overwhelm our enemies with power. But what happens when we face an enemy we can't overwhelm? Drak spoke up. We've always been the strongest. It's never been a problem. Until now, Velra said. The galaxy is bigger than we thought. There are species out there who fight differently, who think differently. If we don't adapt, we'll lose more than tournaments. We'll lose our place in the galactic order. Another warrior, young and angry, stepped forward. So we should become like them? Weak and sneaky? No, Velra said firmly. We should become better versions of ourselves. We keep our strength. But we add to it. We learn new techniques. We study our weaknesses instead of pretending they don't exist. We become warriors who can fight any opponent, not just ones who are weaker than us. The idea was radical for Kresh culture. It went against everything they'd been taught. But slowly heads began to nod. These were warriors. They understood that survival meant adaptation. I want to meet with the human, Velra said. I want to understand how he trains, how he thinks, and then I want to fight him again. That caused a stir. Drock looked concerned. War Chief, if you lose again, then I lose again, Velra interrupted. But I'll lose having learned something. That's worth more than winning while staying ignorant. She dismissed the warriors and stood alone in the training hall. Her pride was still wounded. Losing in front of the galaxy had been the worst moment of her life. But underneath the shame, something else was growing. Curiosity. Respect. The human had shown her that there were things she didn't know. Maybe it was time to learn them. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was having his own revelation. He'd spent the past 2 days watching footage of the fight and studying human martial arts history. Something occurred to him that he hadn't fully understood before. He found Tae Yang in the training room practicing slow movements. Sir, can I ask you something? Always. The technique you used. The palm strike. That's thousands of years old, right? Older than that, Tae Yang confirmed. Some version of it exists in almost every human martial art. Ancient warriors in China used it. So did fighters in Greece, in India, and Africa. Everywhere humans fought, they developed similar techniques independently. Because we needed to, Jinwoo said slowly, understanding dawning. We weren't strong enough to win with brute force. So we learned to hit vital points, to use leverage, to turn an opponent's strength against them. Exactly. And we spent thousands of years perfecting these techniques, testing them in real combat. The ones that worked survived. The ones that didn't were forgotten. What I used against Velra was the distilled knowledge of countless warriors across human history. Jinwoo sat down heavily. The galaxy thinks we're weak, but we're actually survivors. We're the species that learned to kill predators with pointed sticks and clever tactics. And now we're in a galaxy full of predators, Tae Yang said. The question is, do we teach them our tricks? Or do we keep that advantage? What do you think? I think knowledge shared is power multiplied. If we teach others, they become stronger. But so do we. And more importantly, they respect us. They see us as equals, maybe even as teachers. The Kresh won't like that, Jinwoo said. Some won't, Tae Yang agreed. But some will. Change always meets resistance. The question is whether the change is worth the resistance. That evening, Tae Yang received an unexpected message. It was from Velra. She wanted to meet. Alone. Neutral location. Dr. Hyun was immediately suspicious. It could be a trap. Revenge for the humiliation. Maybe, Tae Yang said. But I don't think so. Let's see what she wants. They agreed to meet in one of the station's observation decks. It was a public space with windows looking out at the stars. Security cameras were everywhere. Safe enough. Velra was already there when Tae Yang arrived. She stood L. The weeks following the fight brought changes nobody had expected. Crossroads Prime transformed from a simple tournament station into something more like a cultural exchange hub. Species that had never spoken to each other were suddenly having conversations. Old assumptions were being questioned. New alliances were forming. Earth's delegation grew. More diplomats arrived. Military advisors, scientists, teachers. The human section of the station expanded to accommodate them all. What had started as a small team was becoming something like an embassy. Tae Yang found himself in a strange position. He was still technically just a commander and diplomat. But now he was also a symbol. The human who beat the unbeatable champion. Everywhere he went, aliens stared. Some with respect. Some with fear. Some with curiosity. He tried to maintain his normal routine. Training in the morning, meetings during the day, study in the evening. But normal was becoming harder to find. The most interesting development was the training exchange program. It started small. Velra had been the first to request teaching, but others soon followed. Kral and 5 other young Kresh warriors, 3 Margesh security officers, a delegation from the Drath military, even some Quelon asked to observe. Though their branch-like bodies made physical combat difficult, Tae Yang organized it carefully with help from Jinwoo and 2 new arrivals from Earth. Master Sung was an elderly woman who had taught martial arts for 50 years. Sergeant Deho was a hand-to-hand combat instructor from Earth's Special Forces. Between the three of them, they created a basic curriculum. The first class was held in the station's largest training hall. 20 aliens showed up. Mostly Kresh, but others too. They stood in awkward lines, trying to understand what was about to happen. Tae-yang stood before them in simple training clothes. This won't be easy. Human martial arts take years to master. Decades, even. What I can teach you in a few weeks is just the foundation. The rest is up to you. We're ready, Velra said. She stood in the front row, her massive form incongruous in the student position. But she was serious, her eyes focused intently on Tae-yang. First principle, Tae-yang began. Efficiency. Human martial arts are designed around the idea that you're probably weaker than your opponent, so you don't waste energy. Every movement has a purpose. Every strike targets a specific weakness. He demonstrated slowly. A step, a turn, a strike, nothing flashy. Just precise movement that flowed like water. Looks easy, one of the young Kresh muttered. Then try it, Tae-yang said. For the next hour, the aliens struggled with basic movements. Their bodies weren't built for human techniques. The Kresh were too big and stiff. The Margesh had to adapt movements for floating. The Drath's different joint structure made some positions impossible, but they kept trying. Slowly, awkwardly, they began to understand. This wasn't about copying human movements exactly. It was about understanding the principles and adapting them. Master Sung moved among them, correcting postures with surprising authority despite being a tiny old woman surrounded by massive aliens. Balance. Everything starts with balance. If you're off balance, you can't strike properly. If you're off balance, you can't defend properly. Balance is the foundation. By the end of the session, everyone was tired. Even the Kresh with their incredible stamina were breathing hard. Training muscles they'd never used before, thinking about combat in ways that felt unnatural. Velra approached Tae-yang as the others filed out. That was harder than I expected. Good, Tae-yang said. If it was easy, you wouldn't learn anything. I want to show you something, Velra said. Tomorrow. Kresh combat training. You'll be the student, Tae-yang agreed. Fair was fair. If he was teaching, he should also learn. The next day, Velra led him to the Kresh training area. It was rougher than the human space. Stone floors. Heavy equipment. Everything built to withstand incredible force. Drak and 3 other Kresh warriors were waiting. They looked at Tae-yang with a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed hostility. He had beaten their champion. That wasn't something they could forget. This is how Kresh train, Velra explained. She gestured to a massive stone pillar. We build strength. We build endurance. We learn to take damage and keep fighting, she demonstrated, striking the pillar with her claws. Each impact echoed through the hall. After 10 strikes, she showed her claws. Unmarked. Not even scratched. Your turn, she said to Tae-yang. He looked at the pillar. If he hit that with his bare hands, he'd break bones. But that was the point, wasn't it? To understand that Kresh and humans were different. What worked for one didn't work for the other. I can't strike that with full force, he admitted. My hands aren't built for it. Humans use tools, weapons, or we target soft points instead of hard ones. Velra nodded slowly. Show me. Tae-yang studied the pillar. Then he moved. Not a strike, but a technique. He showed how a human would use leverage to topple something large, how to find the center of balance and exploit it, how to use an opponent's own weight against them. The Kresh warriors watched with growing interest. This was completely different from their methods. Not better or worse, just different. We never learned this, Drak said quietly. We were always strong enough that we didn't need to. But now you know you're not always the strongest thing in the galaxy, Tae-yang said. So maybe it's time to add new tools to your arsenal. The training session continued. Velra showed Tae-yang Kresh grappling techniques, how they used their strength to immobilize opponents, their tactics for fighting multiple enemies, their methods for recovering from injury. It was brutal and effective. Tae-yang could see why the Kresh had dominated for so long. If you could survive their initial assault, if you could weather their strength, only then could you find openings. But most opponents couldn't survive that long. You're thinking, Velra observed. I can see it in your eyes. You're analyzing. Always, Tae-yang admitted. It's how humans survived. We analyzed predators, learned their patterns, found their weaknesses. That's our real strength. Not physical power, mental flexibility. Teach me that, Velra said. How to analyze, how to think like a human warrior. So Taeyang did. Over the following days, he spent hours with Velra. They watched fight footage together. He explained how he had studied her movements, how he'd identified patterns, how he'd calculated the perfect moment to strike. Velra was a surprisingly quick student. Her pride had been humbled, but her intelligence remained sharp. She began to see combat differently, not just as a test of strength, but as a puzzle to solve. I was arrogant, she admitted one evening. They were sitting in the observation deck again, watching ships come and go. I thought strength was enough. I never bothered to study my opponents because I never needed to. You weren't arrogant, Taeyang said. You were inexperienced. There's a difference. Arrogance refuses to learn. You're learning. Meanwhile, the political situation continued to evolve. Earth's position in the galactic community was strengthening daily. More species were requesting meetings. Trade agreements were being signed. Technology exchanges arranged. Humanity was becoming a real player on the galactic stage. But not everyone was happy about it. A faction within the Kresh government saw Earth's rise as a threat. They were the traditionalists, the ones who believed the old ways were the only ways. They had been quiet, but Ambassador Misun's intelligence network picked up concerning signals. They're planning something, she told Taeyang in a private meeting. I don't know what yet, but there's been too much encrypted traffic between Kresh military vessels. Too many closed-door meetings. You think they'll attack Earth? Taeyang asked. I don't think they're that foolish, but they might try something here, on the station. Something to discredit us or prove we're not as capable as we seem. Like what? If I knew that, I could stop it, Misun said with frustration. Just be careful, and keep your team close, the warning proved prescient. 2 days later, an incident occurred. Jin Woo was training alone in the human gym when 3 Kresh warriors entered. Not ones from the training program. These were older, scarred, clearly military veterans. The leader, whose translator tag identified him as War Commander Throck, approached Jin Woo with obvious hostility. You're one of the humans, Throck growled. The weak species that thinks it can challenge us. Jin Woo kept his expression neutral. I'm just training. If you want to use the gym, there's plenty of space. I don't want the gym, Throck said. I want to see if the human victory was luck, or if all humans have these so-called skills. It was clearly a challenge. Jin Woo's first instinct was to accept, to prove himself, but Taeyang's training kicked in. This wasn't about honor. It was a trap. If Jin Woo fought and lost, it would embarrass Earth. If he won, it might provoke a larger conflict. Either way, the traditionalists won. I'm not interested in fighting, Jin Woo said calmly. If you want to test human martial arts, join the training program. Throck's claws extended. I'm giving you a chance to defend yourself. And I'm declining, Jin Woo said. This isn't a tournament. It's not official. Fighting you proves nothing. For a moment, it looked like Throck would attack anyway. His companions. 3 months after the fight, Taeyang stood on the observation deck and watched Earth rise above the station's horizon. The blue marble of home looked small and fragile from here. Hard to believe it was the center of so much change. Behind him, footsteps approached. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. Velra's heavy tread was distinctive. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Tomorrow, Taeyang confirmed. My work here is done. Earth needs me back home to help coordinate all the new treaties and programs. You started something, Velra said. You know that, right? This isn't ending just because you leave. I know, Taeyang said. That was always the goal. Not just to win a fight, but to change minds, to prove that humanity deserves respect. You did more than that, Velra said. She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the stars. You proved that the galaxy's assumptions about strength were wrong. You proved that there are many paths to power. That intelligence and technique can overcome raw force. We proved that together, Taeyang corrected. You could have refused to learn. You could have let pride keep you from growing, but you didn't. That took more courage than fighting ever does. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Over the past months, an unlikely friendship had formed. The human and the Kresh, the teacher and the student. They'd learned from each other, challenged each other, pushed each other to improve. The traditionalists are still angry, Velra said. Throck and his faction. They see the changes as weakness, as betrayal of Kresh values. Change always faces resistance, Taeyang said. The question is whether the resistance can stop it. They can't, Velra said with certainty. Too many young warriors have seen the truth. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the smartest. We're not even the fastest. But we can become the most adaptable. If we choose to. And will you choose to? Velra was quiet for a long moment. I'm challenging for war chief position again. Next cycle. But this time I won't be the same warrior who lost to you. I'll be better, stronger in ways that matter. You'll win, Tai Yang said with confidence. Maybe. But even if I don't, I've already won something more important. Respect, understanding. The knowledge that losing doesn't make you weak. It makes you wiser. The door opened behind them. Bora entered carrying a datapad. Commander, sorry to interrupt, but Ambassador Misun wants to speak with you. Something important from Earth. Tai Yang excused himself and headed to the communication room. The holographic display showed Misun's face. She looked tired but satisfied. Tai Yang. Good news. The Galactic Council has officially upgraded Earth's classification. We're no longer a minor species. We have full voting rights now, full trade privileges, everything we've been working toward for 15 years. Because of the fight, Tai Yang said. Because of what the fight represented, Misun corrected. It proved we're not helpless. Not weak, not inferior. You gave Earth something we desperately needed. Credibility. It wasn't just me, Tai Yang said. The team, the research, the years of development that went into those techniques. All of humanity's history led to that moment. Ever the humble one, Misun smiled. But yes, you're right. It was humanity as a whole. You just happened to be the one demonstrating it. She paused. There's more. 12 species have requested cultural exchange programs with Earth. 7 want military training partnerships. The Drath Alliance has formally proposed a mutual defense treaty. Tai Yang, Earth is being courted by half the galaxy. And the other half? Tai Yang asked. Watching carefully, Misun admitted. Some species are nervous. We've upset the power balance, but that's not necessarily bad. Balance built on fear and strength alone was always fragile. Maybe it's time for a new balance. After the call ended, Tai Yang made his way back to the human quarters. The team was packing. Their mission was complete. It was time to go home. Dr. Hyun was carefully boxing his research materials. I've documented everything. The creche physiology, the training methods, the cultural observations. This will be studied for years. Good, Tai Yang said. The more we understand each other, the better. Jinwoo was checking equipment manifests. The young soldier had changed over these months. He was more confident now, more mature. He'd learned that strength wasn't about size or power. It was about discipline and wisdom. Sir, Jinwoo said, I've been thinking about what happened with Thrak, how Velra defended me. A few months ago I would have thought that was impossible. A creche warrior protecting a human. Things change, Tai Yang said. People change. That's what this was all about. Bora entered with news. The farewell ceremony is ready. Half the station wants to attend. The ceremony was held in the main assembly hall. Hundreds of aliens gathered. Representatives from dozens of species. Some had been there from the beginning. Others had arrived later, drawn by the changes happening on Crossroads Prime. Ambassador Krell spoke first. His 6 eyes gleamed with emotion. The Drath people came to this tournament expecting entertainment. Instead, we witnessed history. Commander Tai Yang showed us that strength has many faces, that wisdom can overcome raw power, that size matters less than skill. Earth and humanity have earned not just our respect, but our friendship. Other species spoke. The Margesh praised human ingenuity. The Quellan talked about adaptive strategies. Even some Kresh spoke. Younger warriors who had trained with the humans and learned to see combat differently. Then Velra stepped forward. The hall fell silent. Everyone remembered the fight. The champion falling. The impossible victory. 3 months ago I stood in the arena and mocked humans as weak, Velra said, her voice carrying clearly. I was wrong. I was ignorant. I judged by appearance and assumption rather than reality. She turned to look directly at Tai Yang. You could have humiliated me further after your victory. You could have gloated. Instead, you offered to teach, to share knowledge, to help me become better. She paused and something unexpected happened. Velra lowered her head in a gesture of respect that shocked every Kresh in the room. It was a sign of acknowledgement between warriors, a recognition of superiority. I am better now because of you, Velra continued. Stronger in ways I didn't understand existed. And I'm not alone. Dozens of warriors have learned from human teachers. We've added new dimensions to our combat abilities. But more importantly, we've learned humility. We've learned that there's always more to discover. Always room to grow. She raised her head and looked around the hall. Let this be remembered. The day the creche learned that strength alone is not enough. The day we began to truly evolve as warriors. The creche section erupted in a roar of approval. Not all of them. The traditionalists remained silent and angry. But the majority, especially the younger generation, were embracing the change. Tai Yang was asked to speak. He stood before the assembly, this gathering of alien species, and chose his words carefully. I didn't come here to prove humans are superior. I came to prove we're not inferior. There's a difference. Every species has strengths. Every species has weaknesses. The Kresh have incredible power. The Drath have sharp minds. The Margesh have advanced technology. Humans have adaptability and technique born from necessity. He gestured around the room. None of these things makes one species better than another. They're just different paths to survival, different solutions to the challenges of existence. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, strong enough to contain all our differences. He paused. What happened in that arena wasn't about me defeating Velra. It was about two different approaches to combat meeting for the first time, one built on overwhelming force, one built on precision and technique. For 3 seconds they collided, and the result surprised everyone, including me. But the real victory isn't that I won. The real victory is what happened afterward. Velra chose to learn instead of staying bitter. The Kresh chose to question their assumptions instead of clinging to tradition. Other species chose to look at humanity differently. That's the victory. Not the fight itself, but what we all chose to do with it. The hall was completely silent. Every being present understood they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered. I'm going back to Earth tomorrow, Taeyang continued. But the work continues. The training programs, the cultural exchanges, the partnerships being built. This is just the beginning, and I'm excited to see where it goes. He stepped back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the applause began. It started with the humans, then spread to the Drath, then the Margesh. Even many of the Kresh joined in, though some still refused. The sound filled the hall, a thunder of hands and claws and appendages showing approval. That evening, Taeyang spent his last hours on Crossroads Prime making final rounds. He visited the training hall where so much had changed. The walls still showed scuff marks from practice sessions. The equipment bore the signs of use by species it was never designed for. Master Sung was there, teaching a late session. The elderly woman moved among Kresh warriors twice her size, correcting their forms with a firm hand and sharp words. They listened respectfully. She had earned that respect through weeks of patient instruction. You're leaving her in charge? Velra asked. She'd followed Taeyang. She doesn't need me.